Okay, this says it's going, so we're gonna trust that. All right, we are in 2 Samuel. If you all remember, the books of 1st and 2nd Samuel were originally one book, so really we're still in the same book, but they later split it up into 2 books, because that's very, very long then, just to make it easier. Little recap, last week we did an overview of the book of 2 Samuel so that we kind of have an idea to keep in our minds as we read through the book. The main things that we talked about, main themes of really the whole book of Samuel, truly, not just limited to 2 Samuel, is that man's attitude towards God creates an opportunity for God, and that God's attitude towards man creates an opportunity for man. And we kind of discussed some of what that looks like in the life of David. He had these 4 main beliefs about God, attitudes towards God, if you want to call them convictions of who God is, that really shaped his life, shaped the direction of his life. You want to know how David was a man after God's own heart? I think that these 4 main beliefs were a big part of it. And the 4 main beliefs, just to kind of recap you, is that God is Israel's supreme leader. That was a big thing that David fully, truly understood and believed, that he was not the sole authority, that he worked for the sole authority, and that God is the supreme leader. The second one is that God is consistently and completely right and righteous, right in all that he initiates, all that he permits, and that our understanding of what is right comes from him. The third is that God is always merciful. That's a big part of David's ability to go to God in his weaknesses and his failings, to confess, because he believed that God was merciful. And then the fourth is that God's will is always best. And we see that truly in David's life, a huge opposition, or a huge contrast to Saul's life. Saul always believed that his will was best. And David lived the opposite of that. So those are the 4 main beliefs that David had about God that truly just shaped his life. And we're going to see those things playing out in his time reigning as king. And that's what 2 Samuel really focuses on, his time in ministry as the king of Israel. So 2 Samuel chapter 1, we can go ahead and start diving in. Verse 1, now it came about after the death of Saul, when David had returned from the slaughter of the Amalekites, that David remained 2 days in Ziklag. So this first verse really kind of gives us a little background of where we're at. Tells us, who, when, and where. We are back in David's story. Remember, the author's kind of been jumping back and forth between Saul and David. So we're back in David's story. Where are we? We're in Ziklag. And when are we? It's 2 days, or the second verse tells us the 3rd day, after the slaughter of the Amalekites. He's been in Ziklag 2 days after returning from the slaughter of the Amalekites. If you remember, David and his men, they've been living in the Philistine territory under the king of Gath, which is one of the main Philistine cities. And they were going to be part of the battle, of the Philistine battle against Israel. They were going to be part of it. And then 4 of the 5 Philistine kings go, bad idea. These are ex-Israelites, but literally David was part of Saul's court. This is a fantastic opportunity for him to betray us and to get back in good graces with the king of Israel. Terrible idea, send them home. So they send them home. And during this time when David and his men have been traveling to and back from the battle area, the families that were left behind in Ziklag were kidnapped during part of a raid from the Amalekites. And so David and his men have to track down their families, defeat the Amalekites, and bring their families back home. That's a very short recap of a lot that happened. But this is the background that we have. So David and his men, the whole families, everyone's reunited. They're back from everything that's happened. And then verse 2, on the third day, behold, a man came out of the camp from Saul with his clothes torn and dust on his head. And it came about when he came to David that he fell to the ground and prostrated himself. So we have someone who is coming from the area where Israel's camp would be. He has the obvious appearance of grief and mourning, and that would be torn clothes, dust on the head. And he immediately takes himself to David and falls at his feet, and he has a message for David. Verse 3, then David said to him, from where do you come? And he said to him, I have escaped from the camp of Israel. David said to him, how did things go? Please tell me. I find that it's interesting that David yet hasn't heard how the battle has gone. It's been a few days, but he hasn't heard anything yet. This is the first he is hearing of it. And I think a part of it is that word travels fast, faster than you'd think. They may not have text and everything, but word travels fast. However, he's in Philistine territory. He's not in Israel's territory. So that might play a part of it, of why he hasn't heard anything yet. The other thing is that we've been going through a lot with the whole Amalekite raid, with reuniting the family back, coming back to Ziklag. Remember, Ziklag was burned with fire, so they're literally rebuilding their homes and their lives at this point. They've been a little busy. So this truly is the first that David is hearing about the battle that God delivered him from being a part of. And so, continuing in verse 4, and he said, the people have fled from the battle, and also many of the people have fallen and are dead, and Saul and Jonathan, his son, are dead also. This little summary of the news reminded me very much of 1 Samuel, I think it's chapter 4, where the messenger comes from the battle and tells Eli the priest the news of how the battle goes. Eli asks him, what's the news of the battle? And he says, Israel's fled, your sons are dead, and the ark has been taken. 1, 2, 3 bad things. And here we have, very similarly, Israel's fled, many people are dead. Saul and Jonathan, his sons, are dead also. So, very similar. Verse 5, so David said to the young man who told him, how do you know that Saul and his son Jonathan are dead? And I wonder, is David in denial, maybe? Or does he not trust what this man is saying? Later on, he asks, who are you? So it's clear that he can recognize he's not an Israelite. And so I wonder if he doesn't trust him because he's like, I don't recognize you. You're not from around here. Not sure. So yeah, I wonder about that. And then let's focus on these verses here, starting in verse 6. The young man who told him said, by chance I happened to be on Mount Gilboa, and behold, Saul was leaning on his spear, and behold, the chariots and the horsemen pursued him closely. When he looked behind him, he saw me and called to me, and I said, here I am. And he said to me, who are you? And I answered him, I am an Amalekite. Quick note, if you remember from 1 Samuel chapter 15, I believe, what did God tell Saul to do? Kill. That's right. To kill all of the Amalekites, every last one of them, and not spare anything, not even the animals. And did Saul obey? No, it was an incomplete obedience. He spared the king and some of the best animals and some of the people for servants and things like that. And he was punished. That was part of his reign being ripped from him by God because he was refusing to obey God's word. And so here it's a little bit of irony, it's maybe a little poetic, that an Amalekite is now part of Saul's death story. The very same Amalekite that should have been killed, yeah. Continuing in verse 9, then he said to me, please stand beside me and kill me, for agony has seized me because my life still lingers in me. So I stood beside him and killed him because I knew that he could not live after he had fallen. And I took the crown which was on his head and the bracelet which was on his arm, and I have brought them here to my Lord. Okay, real quick, we're going to jump over to chapter 31 of 1 Samuel, which literally is the page before, so you don't have to go far. And we're going to compare it to the account that we have in this chapter. Verse 3, the battle went heavily against Saul. The archers hit him, and he was badly wounded by the archers. Then Saul said to his armor-bearer, draw your sword and pierce me through with it, otherwise these uncircumcised will come and pierce me through and make sport of me. But his armor-bearer would not, for he was greatly afraid. So Saul took his sword and fell on it. And when his armor-bearer saw that Saul was dead, he also fell on his sword and died with him. Thus Saul died with his 3 sons, his armor-bearer, and all his men on that day together. Notice anything?
Yeah, they don't match.
Oh, they don't match.
Somebody's lying.
Somebody's lying. Interesting. This chapter 31 is written by the author, inspired by God. It is a detailed account of how Saul and his sons died. And then we have in chapter 1 of 2 Samuel, the next portion of the story, we have this, the word of an Amalekite telling us that he was there and that he was the one responsible for Saul's death. Why do you guys think that he's changed the story a bit? Clearly he's changed the story a bit. What are your thoughts on that? Why would he do that?
Seems like he's trying to appease it, like, oh, I brought these things to you after.
He's trying to ingratiate himself with David a bit. Everyone would have known at this point that Saul and David were enemies. And, you know, hey, if it was David that I came across dead, I would have brought him to Saul and tried to get something out of it. But it's the other way around. Saul's dead. Look at this opportunity that's right before me. I'm going to take these pieces of evidence and bring it over to him, and I'm going to kind of embellish the story a little bit to make me look like the hero, to make me look like I've done him a service, and maybe I'll get something out of it. He's probably going to give me a reward for it. And that's probably the things that are going through his mind. I'm going to try to get in favor with the guy who's next in line, essentially. David will be king next. I might as well try to get myself a good position out of it, maybe.
So was him coming out with sackcloth and ashes on his head, was that all trumped up too?
Might have been.
Like he stumbles out, oh.
Right, yes. Yes. The dramatic flair. Yeah, could have been. What were your thoughts, Marcia?
As of this point, David believed him
Yes.
because he didn't.
We
know
don't see any
better.
evidence that he knew any differently. This is the first he's heard. And he clearly has the evidence to show it as well.
Right.
The crown and the bracelet, right? So, verse 11, then David took hold of his clothes and tore them, and so also did all the men who were with him, and they mourned and wept and fasted until evening for Saul and his son Jonathan, and for the people of the Lord and the house of Israel, because they had fallen by the sword. I think these verses here really, really characterize the heart of David. He had the opportunity. I'm sorry, 2 Samuel 1, verses 11 and 12.
Okay.
He had the opportunity to go, finally, about time. He had the opportunity to rejoice over the death of his enemy. But he didn't. He wept and he mourned and he grieved over, it doesn't say that he only grieved for Jonathan, whom he loved, and the people of Israel. He mourned for all, including Saul. And I think that is a huge indication of the good character that David had. He recognized that this was a person that God had appointed, was anointed by God for that position of leadership. And I mean, unfortunately, Saul didn't do much with it, but it was still a person that God had anointed. And so this was a moment where we see David's heart here. And so then verse 13, David said to the young man who told him, where are you from? And he answered, I am the son of an alien, an Amalekite. And then David said to him, how is it that you were not afraid to stretch out your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed? I'm not sure why the Amalekite was there in the battle. That's kind of an interesting thought. You've got, remember the raid of the Amalekites, and then David went up against them to reclaim his people, his families. So why was this Amalekite over here in the area where the battle was happening between the Philistines and Israel? The only theory that I have is that possibly he was like a mercenary for hire. Perhaps he was the slave of a Philistine or, you know, something of the sort. And that would be how he came to be in that area. But that is kind of all just theory. Verse 15, David called one of the young men and said, go cut him down. And so he struck him and he died. And David said to him, your blood is on your head, for your mouth has testified against you, saying, I have killed the Lord's anointed. So David viewed Saul as the person that God had raised at that time. And so an act against the Lord's anointed was like trying to usurp God's plan, God's control. God had raised a person, and it was God's job to remove that person. At the time, that's right, that God has deemed right. David understood this because twice he had the opportunity to kill Saul, and twice he did not do so because he truly understood and believed that Saul was placed in that position at that time by God, and it was God's job to take him out, not David's. David's job was to wait for his turn next, and he really understood that. And so he saw the killing of God's anointed one as king, as this act of trying to usurp God's will and take control. And this is why he acted in this way. He's basically saying, you've done this to yourself. When he had the man cut down, he said, you've done this to yourself. You've freely admitted that you've done this. What are your thoughts on that?
But he hadn't done it. He hadn't killed Saul.
He hadn't, but David didn't know that.
Yeah. So his little plan backfired.
It did, yes.
He obviously must have had the crown and the gold, so he obviously came across him.
Yep, that's, yeah.
But his plans to be on David's good side didn't work.
No, it didn't. Instead of receiving a reward, he received death. Ah.
Sure, your sins will find you out.
Yeah. That's right. And he also didn't, I think that's the difference between, David and this man. David saw the title of the Lord's anointed as a reality. This is the man the Lord has anointed. And the Amalekite saw it as like a title, It's like another way of just saying the king. It meant nothing to him. To David, it meant everything. And he took that very, very seriously. And so then in verse 17, we see, it says, David then chanted with this lament over Saul and Jonathan his son, and he told them to teach the sons of Judah the song of the bow. And that's these verses that follow. It's a song called the Song of the Bow. And behold, it is written in the book of Jashar. And the book of Jashar is a document of that day that was not inspired by God, and it did not survive to this day. So we do not have the book of Jashar to this day, but clearly that was a document of that time. So verse 19, your beauty, O Israel, is slain on your high places. How have the mighty fallen? Your beauty is thought to be referring to the leaders. That would be Saul and Jonathan particularly. And so it's saying, your beauty, your leaders, O Israel, is slain on your high places. How have the mighty fallen? And we see that phrase, how have the mighty fallen, repeated 3 times in this song. And it's really the main theme that runs throughout the song. Verse 20, tell it not in Gath, proclaim it not in the streets of Ashkelon. Those are 2 of the 5 main cities of Philistine territory, Gath and Ashkelon. Or the daughters of the Philistines will rejoice. The daughters of the uncircumcised will exult. O mountains of Gilboa, let not dew or rain be on you, nor fields of offerings. For there the shield of the mighty was defiled, the shield of Saul not anointed with oil. It's basically saying, let there not be any rejoicing or feasting or victory in this place because of the horrible thing that's happened here, the tragedy of the falling of Israel's leaders. And then when it says the shield of Saul not anointed with oil, it was customary for you to oil your shield after a battle in preparation for the next one. And so it's saying Saul's shield never got oiled because there was going to be no next battle. His battle days are over. He's done. Verse 22, from the blood of the slain, from the fat of the mighty, the bow of Jonathan did not turn back, and the sword of Saul did not return empty. This is a testament to how mighty warriors Jonathan and Saul were. And they were mighty warriors. Saul was a mighty warrior of his day. And Jonathan, if you remember back in 1 Samuel, he was always willing to go into battle, even when it looked like the numbers weren't good. But he knew that God was with him. His bow did not turn back. He always went forward into battle. There was no cowardice in him at all, is essentially what it's saying. Verse 23, Saul and Jonathan, beloved and pleasant in their life, and in their death they were not parted. They were swifter than eagles. They were stronger than lions. O daughters of Israel, weep over Saul, who clothed you luxuriously in scarlet, who put ornaments of gold on your apparel. How the mighty fallen in the midst of the battle. If you notice, what are David's words of Saul in this song? Anything bad? Good things. All good things. He's talking about how he is a mighty warrior. He was a leader of Israel. It talks about how Saul clothed people luxuriously in scarlet, ornaments of gold. He's saying there was a time of prosperity under Saul. He's pointing out all of the good things of Saul in this song. He chose to mention the good things about him.
Would that kind of be like not speaking ill of the dead?
Yes, but I think
He's doing
not just
more
out
than
of,
that.
yes, I think it's not just out of politeness. Because, he's not doing that like, ooh, I just don't want to say anything bad because that would hurt people's feelings.
He's doing the opposite. He's saying really good things.
Yes, yeah. He's not just choosing to avoid it. He's going above and beyond and praising the good aspects of Saul and his time as king in a way of honoring him. Yeah. I forgot where I'm at. 25, how have the mighty fallen in the midst of the battle? Jonathan is slain on your high places. I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. You have been very pleasant to me. Your love to me was more wonderful than the love of women. I think that these words are actually quite mild when we consider truly how close these men were. They were best friends, the bestest of friends. And he's in his words here, he's saying, your love to me was more wonderful than the love of women, in a way that was unique. Not to say that they had a romantic relationship, because that's not at all what they had. But and we understand this as women, a woman's relationship with another woman is unique and different from our relationship with our husband. And that's kind of what David's getting at. He's like, you were a brother. The love I had for you and the love you had for me was special, and it was different from the love that I enjoy with, well, in David's case, it was wives. But that's what he is getting at here. And then verse 27, again with the theme, how have the mighty fallen, the weapons of war perished. And the weapons of war is a reference to the mighty warriors of Israel. So we have this beautiful song, the Song of the Bow, that David sang in this moment, and it's recorded for all of history. What are your thoughts on this song?
It's like a eulogy to him.
Yeah, it is. It's a way of honoring the dead.
It's a beautiful tribute to Saul and Jonathan.
It is, yeah.
You know, it said it was in that book, but we have it here in the Bible.
Yes.
We
And
don't
so
need
it-
that book.
Yes. So even though that document did not survive to this day, we have it recorded here for us. Yeah.
But it sounds like he was having it recorded, told them to teach the sons of Judah this song.
Yes.
Like so that people would always know
Yes.
forever.
Let it be
Handed
passed
down.
on. Yeah. And like you said, Marcia, a tribute to the first king of Israel. Really, I think that's what we're forgetting, is this is the first king of Israel. It's a really momentous part of Israel's history. And so David is marking this moment in the best way possible that he knows how to. And we know David is good with song. So yeah, that was his way of doing that. So chapter 2, we'll just continue. Then it came about afterwards that David inquired of the Lord, saying, shall I go up to one of the cities of Judah? And the Lord said to him, go up. So David said, where shall I go? And he said, to Hebron. So this is immediately afterwards, and the question on everyone's mind, and especially on David's mind, is, okay, Saul's dead. What do we do next? What should we do? And so he thinks, well, I don't need to be in Philistine territory anymore. I'm free to go back to the land of Israel. Where should I go? And so that's the first question. And he starts off his reign in the best way possible, and that's by inquiring of the Lord. Good job, David. He inquires of the Lord. This is really key to his success in his reign. Remember, he views himself as the servant of the true king of Israel, and so he's asking for instructions. He's asking for a directive. Even in the small things, like, where am I moving to? Communion with God, looking to him for guidance, seeking his will. These are all characteristics of David that make him an effective tool in the hands of God. And we're seeing it right here. The first thing he does after Saul is dead. And so God answers him. And he says, you can go on up. And David's like, but where? To Hebron. And Hebron is one of the main cities of Judah's area. Right here. And so David is over here somewhere. Here's Gath. He's kind of like on an outskirt city of Gath and Ziklag. And so Hebron is here. Hebron's actually, it is a city, but it's kind of more of a region made up of like multiple villages or towns, I suppose, if you want to call it. And so and if you remember, this was a while back, I'm trying to remember which book that was in, if it was Exodus or Leviticus, that talked about the cities of refuge. Do you guys remember the cities of refuge? They were certain cities that were set apart, that someone who's accused of murder could flee to and find refuge in that city, and they would be safe from anyone who was trying to avenge the death. And so that person would be there until they either died or were proven innocent. And it was a city of refuge. Hebron is the largest city of refuge in this area. And so I think that it's interesting. Maybe there's nothing to it, but we can maybe guess that there would be people who might think that David is either responsible for Saul's death or played a hand in Saul's death. Maybe they would want to accuse him of some part in it. There are going to be people who aren't happy about Saul's death and David's now in line. Because it's not just Saul, it's his sons as well. And so this is a very confusing time for Israel. What's happening? What's happening? That's kind of what's on everyone's mind here. So David, he is anointed, or we'll continue here. Verse 2. So David went up there, and his 2 wives also, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess and Abigail, the widow of Nabal the Carmelite. Quick note, if the first verse gives us the key to David's success, which would be his communion with God and his inquiring of the Lord, seeking his will and his guidance, verse 2 gives us the path of the tragedy in David's life, and that is his relationship with women. He did not make good choices with that. He went contrary to what the Lord desired for his people, which is a marriage of one man and one woman, and he went contrary to that. He took up the norm of the other nations, which would be that a man in power took many wives, and it was that was his downfall. Verse 3, and David brought up his men who were with him, each with his household, and they lived in the cities of Hebron. Then the men of Judah came, and there anointed David king over the house of Judah. So he is now anointed as king. Remember, he was first anointed by Samuel as a shepherd boy. This is his second anointing, technically. Saul kind of had the same thing, if you remember. Samuel anointed him. It was just the 2 of them. And then later on, he was anointed in front of like his tribe of Benjamin, and it was a formal crowning occasion, I suppose, if you want to call it. And so David is now anointed over the house of Judah. Remember, he is of the tribe of Judah, so this is his kinsmen that are a part of this. And continuing in verse 4, they told David, saying, it was the men of Jabesh Gilead who buried Saul. So verse 5, David sent messengers to the men of Jabesh Gilead and said to them, may you be blessed of the Lord, because you have shown this kindness to Saul your Lord and have buried him. Now may the Lord show loving kindness and truth to you, and I also will show this goodness to you, because you have done this thing. Now therefore let your hands be strong and valiant, for Saul your Lord is dead, and also the house of Judah has anointed me king over them. So we have David. He's informed of the honorable deeds of the men of Jabesh Gilead. If you remember, Saul played a big part in rescuing the people of Jabesh Gilead from raiders early on in his reign. And then later, when Saul died, and the Philistines took his body and the bodies of his sons, and they were displaying them as a form of humiliation. The men of Jabesh Gilead marched all night long and risked their lives to recover the bodies of Saul and his sons, to bring them back to their city, to give them a proper burial. This is a very honorable thing for them to do, and they probably did it in response to how Saul treated them before, and also just as out of loyalty to Saul. And so we have David, who is sending a message to these men who were loyal to Saul. So let's keep that in mind as you're noticing the choice of words and the message that he has here. Because the first thing he does is he recognizes the kindness and the honor that was shown to Saul, who was the Lord's anointed, by giving him a proper burial. And he pays them a compliment for their character. He's saying, you are men of good character. You have done this kind thing. May you be blessed of the Lord because you've shown this kindness to Saul and you have him buried. So he expresses a desire for God to bless them. In the next verse, now may the Lord show loving kindness and truth to you. And I also will show goodness to you because you have done this thing. And so David is saying, just as God blesses you, so I will bless you. He is following after the pattern of God in leadership. Now remember, these are men that are loyal to Saul. He could have said, that was nice, but I'm just warning you, I'm next. You know, if you continue to show loyalty to the house of Saul, I'll have to come up against you. He doesn't say anything like that. He says, God that is good to you for the kind thing that you did, for the honorable thing that you did, and I also will bless you as God blesses you. And so he is acting as God's representative in this moment, and he is encouraging unity between his tribe and the men of this tribe here. And then in the last verse, verse 7, now therefore let your hands be strong and valiant, for Saul your Lord is dead. And so he is encouraging them, even though their leader is dead. He says, and also the house of Judah has anointed me king over them. So he's saying, Judah's anointed me. And it's an indirect and subtle way of inviting them also to acknowledge David as their king. He's saying, Judah's anointed me. I'm king of Judah. And it's this hand of friendship that's being offered to them. You also can recognize that I am the anointed king, and he's encouraging them to follow in God's will. He's saying it was God's will that I'm anointed to be the next king. Don't fight against that. I'm inviting you into participating in God's will. That's kind of what he's doing here. And he really could have done all this differently. He could have seen their loyalty to Saul as a threat. He could have declared them enemy. He could have warned them not to come up against him. But instead, we see that he praises their character. He invites them to treaty. He works towards unity. And these are all marks of a godly leader. He's working towards peace, not just between man and man, between him and the men of Jabesh Gilead, but also between the men of Jabesh Gilead and God, that they would have peace with God's will as well. What are your thoughts on this?
My thought was that he really appreciated that they did that for Saul.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
As much as we know he loved Saul and Jonathan.
Mm-hmm.
I took that as a very sincere compliment to them,
Mm-hmm.
but it also shows that he's smart politically.
Yes. Yes.
He does the thanking and the encouraging before he says, but now I'm king.
Right. Yes.
So he put it in a certain order that shows his political smartness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think he really did appreciate what they did.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think that's a very genuine thing for him to send this message. And yeah, he's truly thankful. I think you're right. I'll continue in verse 8. But Abner, the son of Ner, commander of Saul's army, had taken Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, and brought him over to Mahanaim. And he made him king over Gilead, over the Asherites, over Jezreel, over Ephraim, and over Benjamin, even over all Israel. Ishbosheth, Saul's son, was 40 years old when he became king over Israel, and he was king for 2 years. The house of Judah, however, followed David, and the time that David was king in Hebron over the house of Judah was 7 years and 6 months. So we have Abner. So Abner was Saul's cousin, and he was the commander of Saul's army. And then all of a sudden we hear about another son of Saul, Ishbosheth. Where were you, man? Where have you been? Because last I heard, Saul and all of his sons died. So how does that happen? Where does this fourth son come from, and why is he alive? We don't have an answer. Truly, we don't have an answer, but we have a clue. And the clue is that his name, Ishbosheth, means man of shame. And so the possibility is that he was either a coward and was nowhere near the battle at all, or that also a coward and he was hiding or fleeing while in the battle. That is the possibility. We don't truly know what happened, how this all came about, but that is the strong guess towards how all of a sudden we have a fourth son who is alive and did not die with everyone else in the battle. And then we have Abner, who is going against the will of God. He knows that David is the next anointed, and he is working desperately to continue the house of Saul, the house of which he is a part of, that he has a prominent position in. His family's house. He's working towards maintaining and preserving that. And so he takes this cowardly son of Saul and he makes him king over, it says over all Israel. That would be over all Israel minus Judah. So we have Judah down there, right here. And then there's Simeon down here, and then we've got all these other tribes here. And so that would be it. So typically it was kind of divided north and south, like around this area. We don't typically hear of Simeon being included with Judah. I'm not. I don't know if Simeon's tribal area was included in the rest of Israel, and it was just Judah that was, or if it's kind of been lumped in with Judah. I have to look into that. I don't know. I'm sorry.
So question, was
Yeah.
Saul king over all,
Yes,
but David is only king over Judah?
at this point, yes.
Because of Abner.
Because of Abner, yes. So Judah, being David's tribe, immediately makes him king. They recognize him as king. The rest of the tribes have not been part of that yet, have not acknowledged that, because they are under the control of Abner, who is trying to make Ishbosheth king and continue the house of Saul. So the other tribes are not, I don't know if they're not convinced or what. I don't know the reasons behind that at the time. But we have this interesting little peek at the future division of the nation, where we'll be divided once more, Israel and Judah. And so we have this little glimpse into that division. And so we see that Ishbosheth ruled over Israel, David ruled over Judah. It said that Ishbosheth ruled for 2 years, and David ruled for 7 years and 6 months. And you're like, that doesn't quite line up. How do we work that? The thought is that it took Abner that long, 5 years-ish, to make Ishbosheth king. So Judah is securely acknowledging David as king, and the whole time the rest of the tribes are probably in a lot of confusion of trying to figure out what's going on and what to do. And it took Abner 5 years to make Ishbosheth king over the rest of Israel. And then he only reigned for 2 years. So then verse 12 gives us a clue into the civil war that's happening in Israel. Now Abner the son of Ner went out from Mahanaim to Gibeon with the servants of Ishbosheth the son of Saul. And Joab the son of Zeruiah and the servants of David went out and met them by the pool of Gibeon. And they sat down, one on the one side of the pool and the other on the other side of the pool. Okay, so Zeruiah is David's sister. So Joab is his nephew. And he's actually got 3 nephews that are named in this chapter, which would be Joab. He later becomes the commander of David's army. He's a brilliant military strategist, but he's a bit bloodthirsty. And he is personally responsible for many deaths in this book. Abishai is the next one. He's mentioned back in 1 Samuel 26, back when David had the opportunity to kill Saul. Remember, God put the whole camp under a deep sleep, and they were able to sneak in and steal Saul's jug and spear. Abishai was the one that went with David, and he was the one that was like, let me kill him. I only have to do one spear and he'd be done. That was Abishai. And the last is Asahel, and his story starts and stops here, unfortunately. And you're seeing 2 opposing parties, north and south, that are meeting at a mutually agreeable or acceptable location, which would be the pool of Gibeon here. I'll be honest with you, if I say a different word other than Gibeon, it's because there's a million words that all sound the same like that. Gibeon, Gideon, Gibeah, what's the other one? There's another one that's like just like it. I can't remember them all. It's ridiculous. Pool of Gibeon. It is a pool that is cut out of the rock, and it's 30. Where do I have this? Oh, I thought I wrote it down. Never mind. I think it's around 37 feet across. It's round, and then it's a good like 80-something feet down. It's quite far down, and it's only the last bit of it that's water. You have to go quite a bit down just to get to the water line. And there's it's still there to this day. They did an amazing excavation of it and found a lot of incredible things. There's a spiraling staircase that goes all around the outside of it down. And so, yeah, that's this place that they're at, and you've got one party on one side and the other party on the other side, and it's kind of this peace meeting, essentially, as the whole purpose of this. Let's get together and try to figure out what we're doing here, because we can't continue like this. And so they started out good with trying to get together and come to an agreement. However, verse 14, then Abner said to Joab, now let the young men arise and hold a contest before us. And Joab said, let them arise. This is not a sports contest. This would be a contest of champions, essentially like David and Goliath. That's what he's suggesting here. Why have all this bloodshed when we can just pit a few against each other and we only lose a few? And then it's decided.
To the death, though.
To the death, correct, to decide. And so they start out good with
Talking
getting
to the right guy, though, Joab.
Yeah,
I mean,
I know. He agreed to it.
Sure.
But I think it's interesting because they start out good with the intention of talking to maintain peace, and then the next thing they do is they resort to violence and fighting. They stopped talking and they started fighting. You're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to have peace. You're going to continue the hostility of a nation that's at war within itself when you stop talking and you keep fighting. And so then it says, verse 15, so they arose and went over by count, 12 for Benjamin, and Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, and 12 of the servants of David. So you have the tribe of Benjamin, that's Saul's and Ishbosheth's tribe. And then you have the servants of David, he is the tribe of Judah. Verse 16, each one of them seized his opponent by the head and thrust his sword in his opponent's side, so they fell down together. Therefore that place was called whatever that means, and which is in Gibeon. I'm not gonna try and pronounce that.
Did all 24 die?
All 24 died.
I read it like 5 times.
I know. I read that too, and I'm like, so what happened?
So they each grabbed each other's hair and then,
Yeah. I grab you, you grab me, and we end up killing everybody dies, that's essentially, yeah. Yeah, yes, exactly. So nothing's decided. 24 young men die, and
Go back where
nothing
you
comes
were.
of it. No fruit in it whatsoever. Just ridiculous. And so instead of saying, well, that didn't work, let's try this another time, everybody have a good day. Nope, fighting just continues with everybody now. There's no picking new champions. Everybody's fighting at this point. Verse 17, that day the battle was very severe, and Abner and the men of Israel were beaten before the servants of David. Now the 3 sons of Zeruiah were there, Joab and Abishai and Asahel. And Asahel was as swift-footed as one of the gazelles which is in the field. Asahel pursued Abner and did not turn to the right or to the left from following Abner. Then Abner looked behind him and said, "Is that you, Asahel?" And he answered, "It is I." So Abner said to him, "Turn to your right or to your left and take hold of one of the young men for yourself and take for yourself his spoil." That Asahel was not willing to turn aside from following him. So we have Asahel. He's a mighty warrior, but he is young, and he is pursuing Abner, who is a much more experienced warrior. And basically Abner is saying, turn aside, go pick a fight with someone else who's more on your level. You don't want to come up and fight against me. It's a bad idea, because if you do, I'm going to kill you, and there's not going to be anything good that comes out of that. And so he's literally giving a warning to Asahel, and Asahel does not give up. He pursues relentlessly. He will not turn aside, and that's going to be his destruction. And let's listen to what Abner says next in verse 22. Abner repeated again to Asahel, "Turn aside from following me. Why should I strike you to the ground?" He knows how it's going to end. "How then could I lift up my face to your brother Joab?" See, he knows that if he kills Asahel, he is about to start a personal war between himself and Joab. It would be a personal war between these two commanders. And it won't stop until there's more bloodshed. It will only continue. He knows that. And that's exactly what happens. Verse 23, however, he refused to turn aside. Therefore, Abner struck him in the belly with the butt end of the spear, so that the spear came out at his back. It wasn't a close call fight. It was very clear that Abner would be overcoming Asahel. And he fell there and died on the spot. And it came about that all who came to the place where Asahel had fallen and died stood still. They were shocked, absolutely shocked, that their mighty warrior was dead. Verse 24, but Joab and Abishai pursued Abner, and when the sun was going down, they came to the hill of Ammah, which is in front of Giah by the way of the wilderness of Gibeon. So they come to this hill. Verse 25, the sons of Benjamin gathered together behind Abner and became one band, and they stood on the top of a certain hill. So essentially, they've got the high ground, and they are kind of forming this wall and this force behind Abner, and it's stopping the men of Judah from pursuing Abner any farther. And so now they can finally stop and have words with one another, which is what they do next. Verse 26, and Abner called to Joab and said, shall the sword devour forever? Do you not know that it will be bitter in the end? How long will you refrain from telling the people to turn back from following their brothers? What words to come out of his mouth? He's the one that suggested it in the first place. And that's exactly what Joab says next. Verse 27, Joab says, as God lives, if you had not spoken, surely then the people would have gone away in the morning, each from following his brother. We wouldn't be here if you hadn't suggested all this in the first place, Abner. This is all you are doing. However, Joab is not entirely without fault. He did agree to the contest of champions, so he is not without fault here. Verse 28, so Joab blew the trumpet, and all the people halted and pursued Israel no longer, nor did they continue to fight anymore. Abner and his men then went through the Arabah all that night, so they crossed the Jordan, walked all morning, and came to Mahanaim. Mahanaim is is kind of a temporary capital, essentially. Gibeah, whichever it is, Gibeah, I think, is Saul's hometown. So that is like that was his headquarters, essentially. But Mahanaim is a temporary capital, and it would later also be when the nation divided again. It would later also be. Then Joab returned from following Abner. When he had gathered all the people together, 19 of David's servants besides Asahel were missing. But the servants of David had struck down many of Benjamin and Abner's men, so that 360 men died. Big difference. Big difference. And they took up Asahel and buried him in his father's tomb, which was in Bethlehem. And Joab and his men went all night until the day dawned at Hebron. So each party, the parties part ways, essentially, and they go to their own capitals, and nothing is decided. Nothing happened. Nothing came of that. And so we see in this chapter a lot of hostility and the ways of encouraging hostility. You stop talking. You start fighting. You keep pushing on people. And then you insist on defending yourself. Abner didn't have to kill Asahel. Clearly, he was a very capable warrior. He did not have to kill him, but he chose to.
Would he have lost his standing though if he let someone who was lesser a warrior go? Would that have, was that on the line also?
I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure. A man in his position, it's possible that either could have damaged him or that they would have respected whatever decision he made anyway, because he was a man of great command and position. So I'm not sure. That's a good question, though. However, he's still the one that was trying to talk peace when the men met at that hill. Abner and all of his band of Benjamin men, and then it's Joab and Abishai who are there as well. They could have said, "Hey, look, we outnumber them. Let's go and overcome them." But instead, he was saying, like, "Let's not fight anymore. Let's just be done." So I think that he truly did have the opportunity to choose a different path other than killing Abishai. But I think he did that on purpose. Because that would have been a direct hit at the house of David as his nephew.
And yet he was still giving him the out. He was
Yes,
still
that's
offering
true.
him,
He did.
but you can get out.
Yeah,
And then again, hey, but
yeah,
you can still turn back. Go get another one of my people
right,
and slay them and take
Right.
their stuff.
right.
I think it's very prideful though, like, don't make me do this.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I don't wanna,
Yeah, and then yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting to see the minds of these men. They're very, violent, bloodthirsty commanders of war.
Because he could have killed him a little more gently.
Yeah.
He just did that. He didn't have to run him through.
Yeah.
So that everyone who came upon it, he could have.
Yes. I think it was maybe humiliating. Like, oh man, not only was our mighty warrior beaten, but he was beaten badly. Yeah.
Well, would the butt end of the spear be like,
Is it the non-pointy
That's the
end?
non-pointy end.
Yeah,
That
I
would've
mean-
sucked a lot.
Fair. Fair.
I think That's in the next chapter. Yeah.
Just gonna quick write that in my Bible.
Take a side note.
Terrible.
No, well, unless there's covering
Or a
over.
sheet or something,
But
yeah.
think how the
I know.
force you would have
Yeah.
to use to get the butt end.
I think that's what proves that he was a way more accomplished warrior than Asaph. It was not a close fight. It was, he had all the control and all the power in that moment, and he still chose to do that. So, yeah, I know. But yeah, still nowhere. these two sides. Nothing was accomplished out of all of this. And it is a glimpse of what the nation will experience later in its life, in its history. Any last thoughts on this chapter?
Well, I feel like I understand it better than I did when I read it. That's when I read it, I was going,
What's happening?
I don't know who's who, I don't know who's the good guy, who's the bad guy.
We'll go ahead and read chapters 3 and 4 for our next time that we meet. And the drama will continue. Denise, would you mind praying for us tonight? Thank you.
Heavenly Father, we just thank you for bringing us together tonight for this time of learning and fellowship, and thank you for Rochelle being willing to lead us. And again, we just remember those who are on our prayer list, prayer requests, people that are hurting or recovering, and just be with us as we go about the rest of our week. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.